Gemara is asking. So I'm going to use your question. I'm going to use your question to introduce the new Gemara. Okay. In a moment, we're going to start in a second. Let's do the learning sponsors. Okay, a year of learning. Bella and David Adler in memory of her father Eliel ben Yosef Cohen. Friends of Hani Chaifetz, Chana Shoshana Bad Yosef. Friends of Jack Prince, Yaakov Yitzchak ben Shmuel Dov. Friends of Sandy Davidoff, Shulamit Bat Chaim Eliyahu. Friends of Judy Cohen, Yudi Deliba Bat Moshe. Friends of Dr. Annette Safransky, Chana Bat Ephraim Fischel. Gail and Leslie Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Mushka Sprinza Bat Yosef Chaim Bachava, Kanan ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Alevi V'Tzipora, Isser ben Yom Moshe Cohen Vachana. Friends of Linda Katz, Pinda Bat Yoshua. Leah and Harvey Greenberg, in memory of their parents, Esther Bat Eliezer, Yaakov Yosef ben Abraham, Sarah Rivka Bat Baruch Yehuda, Batzal ben Abraham Alevi. Friends of Rochelle Ebner, Rachel Bat Moshe. Ike and Evelyn Blachor, in memory of his sister, Dr. Phyllis Pacheco, Liv Shabbat Isser. Steve and Arlene Greenberg, in memory of his father, Chaim ben Shmuel Halevi. Harriet Brick and her family, in memory of their beloved Rabbi Moshe Kranzler. A Month of Learning by Stephanie Gold and Fred Mortman, in memory of Jacqueline Santiz Lepere, sister of Bruce Deutsch. Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his mother, Fega Bat Yaakov. Judy Schiff, in memory of her mother, Chaya Chava Bat Menachem Mendel. Sid Paris, okay, in memory of his mother, Yudis Bat Tzvi, and his father, Chaim ben Aaron HaKohen. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of her father, Yaakov ben Yosef. Hannah and David Grunblatt, in memory of her mother, Rosa Bat Reb Chaim, and his mother, Rebbetzin Esther Yocheved Bat Moshe. B. Pizer, in memory of her mother, Razel Bat Shammai. B. Pizer, in memory of her stepfather, Avram Michal ben Shmuel Halevi. Bonnie and Mark Yedlin, in memory of her mother, Rivka Bat Avram Tzvi Halevi, and her father, Zeb ben Menachem Mendel. Judy Jeremias, in memory of her husband, Tzvi ben Zev. The students of Rabbi Yisrael Leib Eb Kurtzer, in appreciation of 17 years of dedication as Maggid Shir of Daf Yomi. Ira Grobert, in memory of his mother, Rosa Bat Yitzchak. A week of learning by Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Charlie's wife and Sam's sister, Menucha Sarah Bat Yechiel Michal. Harriet Schneer and her children, David Sharon Schneer, in memory of Helen Garfinkel. Yesterday was the 8th. Okay, I don't know if they read the learning sponsors. They did not, okay, so we'll include it today. Jay and Wendy Goldberg, in memory of his mother, Devorah Bat Tzvi Hersh. Judy Fuchs, in memory of her mother, Tzipora Bat Akiva. B. Worden, in memory of her mother, Shprinza Bat Baruch, today being the 9th. Sandy and Sydney Goldschmidt, in memory of her mother, Tzivia Bat Avraham Matityahu Zil. Florence and Jay Levy, in memory of her mother, okay, Belima Bat Peretz. May the Neshamas have an Aliyah, Krank Rafia, Velti Yeshua Shematliya, and the Chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Gaben Yah, and a Tchiyah Am Yisrael. Okay. All right, as I indicated, I really did not prepare. Okay, so we'll try to wing it a little bit. And those who have Art Scroll may be called upon to help. All right. All right. So I want to use your question to start off as a review and introduction to the new mission. Okay. It would appear then that the Beis Din has the responsibility. Okay. That if, for example, we saw that there were no witnesses to the killing, and yet you're aware that this person may have committed a murder.
How?
Okay. How would they hear? Okay, there could be one witness, for example. I'm reviewing to start the new Mishnah, which will be on Pei Aleph Amud Beis, okay, otherwise known as 81b B3.
If they were not allowed to kill someone.
Wait a second.
Without two witnesses. So this is, you're saying there's right. Like a loophole that they.
Well, that's what we're going to lead into. Okay, so what happens? So it would appear that since we've already seen elsewhere in the Mishnah that there is a pasuk that says "Ubiarta hara b'kirbecha," that you should remove any evil in your society, in yourself, that the Beis Din has a responsibility to provide for the proper justice and the welfare of the society. If that's the case, if let's say they don't have sufficient testimony, we've seen that two cases. Number one, if it's only one witness, or the Gemara is going to tell us basically through Rashi, there are two witnesses, but one saw it through one window and one saw it through another window. And the two witnesses weren't aware that they were observing the same incident. Okay? So those are examples where you do not have, or the Gemara has already taught us, let's say there's a situation where you can't provide hazama against the witnesses. So in all those cases, you're dealing with a scenario that you cannot bring the individual clearly to a full sentencing of a death penalty. But nevertheless, the Beis Din has this responsibility for the welfare of the society. So what do? They incarcerate this individual. And according to what the Gemara seems to have told us so far, okay, they initially feed him minimum amount of bread and water so that his stomach shrinks. And then ultimately, then they feed him barley into his belly, which will cause his stomach to burst. Okay, so it's indirect death is what the Gemara wants us to understand. Okay, so using that, which is a good question, as an opportunity to review and jump back into the Gemara. Okay, we'll do the best we can. All right, because we're starting a new Mishnah. Okay. What happens, says this Mishnah? Hagonev et a kisva, one who steals a kisva,
It's on the
which,
bottom
okay, which is,
yeah, I'm sorry, it's on the bottom of not on the top.
Okay.
It's a couple of Mishnah.
Right.
We want the bottom one.
right. We're on the bottom one, right? Right. That's
Yeah, right.
So the kisva is suggested to be some sort of implement from the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. All right, a utensil. V'hamikalel b'kosem. Okay, or one who curses through magic. Okay, the divine name. Vahaboel Aramit, or one who has relations with an Aramean woman. Okay, which we assume to mean a heathen. Okay,
not married, just cohabit.
Right, just plain old-fashioned sex. Right. What happens? Okay, what happens? Okay, and then goes on. Kanaim pogim bo, the Kanaim, those are the zealots. Okay, we're going to define what it means by zealots shortly. Okay, so the zealots, pogim bo, they strike him. Now another example, Kohen sheshimesh batuma. We know that the oraita, a Kohen is not permitted to carry out any part of the avoda when he is in a condition, a status of ritual impurity. So what happens? Betuma, ein echav hakohanim mevi'in oto lebeit din. They do not, I'm going to put in parentheses, need to bring him to the courthouse. Okay, they're going to take justice into their own hands. And the Gemara is going to clarify that shortly. Okay, Ella, what happens in this case is the Mishnah, Pirchei Kahuna, the young, younger, let's say, bar mitzvah to 18 or bar mitzvah to 20, okay, that age group, they are all right, what do? Motzi'ino to chutz la'azara, they take him outside the temple precinct, right? Umafzi'in et mocho begizirin, and they bash his head in.
Without the Sanhedrin, just themselves.
That's an example of the Kanaim, the zealots. Okay, we have to see what the Kanaim are in the other situation. Yes. No, that's the the Gemara is going to have a good point, Alan. The Gemara is really going to be bothered by this and has to answer the question. Okay, if they've committed, in other words, is there a way that they would kill him and then not have contact with the body? By striking him with a staff and beating his skull in, they're killing him. But that doesn't mean that they have contact with the mace.
But they're killing him, but look at Pinfoot.
But
No, look at Pinfoot.
No, that's not the case. Right? That's not the case. Okay. But that's why I'm saying the answer I'm giving you is something that the Gemara may come back and tell us.
No, it's not murder, it's like justice, that it's not murdering.
Well, that's what the Gemara is going to be asking about the Mishnah. That's the question. Do we accept mob justice? That is really the essence of the question. Okay? If you have a judicial system that has clearly defined parameters vis-a-vis a death sentence, okay, how can you accept mob justice in terms of situations, right? Okay, so
he takes them out. They take him out from the Zara, into an open place, so there's
Right.
no too much overhead.
right, that's clearly the case, right? Right? So okay, or another example, Zar Sheshimesh b'mikdash. Take that example. And okay, now we know that, let's say, to do the shechita, you could have a non-Kohen, right? That we've already learned some time back. Okay. However, what do we see here? Okay, we were saying about there were certain particular practices after the shechita, transporting the blood, etc., etc. Okay, okay, that had to be done by a Kohen. So that's what, right? Rabbi Akiva Omer B'chenek. Rabbi Akiva says, perhaps he says, in that situation of the Tsar, he's punishable by strangulation. The Chachamim Omrim B'yadei Shemayim. But the sages say the punishment would be karet. Okay? Now, remember, by the way, if somebody has a punishment of karet, they're also going to get malchus. So there is a human punishment carried out, okay, but the death penalty is not to be carried. Let's go on. We'll try again as far as I can do, and then with help. My kisva, what do we mean when we said in the beginning of the Mishnah, at the Resha, that it is that they steal a temple instrument, a temple utensil? Okay. Amar Rav Yehuda, says Rav Yehuda, what is it? He suggests clay sharet, an instrument that's used in the mikdash. Okay, v'chein hu omer, and thus he says, right, citing a pasuk, ve'et kshot hanesech. Okay, that this is referring to that kind of an item. It is the bar. Okay, if you think of the showbread, all right, and the showbread that has, all right, a number of layers, and you have to put the bread, okay, a loaf on each layer, okay, and you have rods, I'm going to call it for a moment, okay, in that unit, and the bread is resting on the rods, okay, we're talking about his suggesting that that's what he's referring to, one of those rods that come out of the showbread or are movable. Okay, so what happens? Vehecha ramiza, and where is this suggested? Based on a pasuk, he says, "V'lo yavo lerot kiboleya et hakodesh v'metu." Okay, so that's what he's suggesting there. Okay, that would be the possible answer. Okay, next example, hamikalel b'kosem. We suggested that was based on the idea, right, of one who was, okay, right, with enchantment, with magic. Okay, so what happens now? A little language issue, right? Tanu, Atane Rav Yosef. What does Rav Yosef teach understanding this? Yakeh kosem et kazmo. Okay? So he's going to say that basically one uses an idol and the enchantment, the magic associated with the idol to do the cursing. Okay? Rabbanan. Okay? The itema, and all right, so that's what he's doing. All right? Okay? And the other, he's suggesting, okay, that this curses others. However, right? The itema and others say Rabba bar Mary. Amri, he says, Yakehu kosem lo ulakono ulamkno. Okay, that he basically through enchantment, okay, he's again using the magic of an idol, and once again, okay, he's going to use that to curse a person, okay, to his master, and of course, who do we mean by his master? Okay, the Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's his point. Okay, now we get to the third. Okay, all right. Okay, could be Yakeu Kosem Lo. Okay, another person. Okay, or the Kono, his creator, which is the Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ulamakno, is also his master. Again, referring to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Okay? Third example we saw in the Resha of the Mishnah. Haboel Aramit. Okay, one who had relations with a heathen woman. Okay, that's one translation. Okay, so what happens here? Bamine Rav Kahana. Okay, may Rav. Okay, so he asked, Rav Kahana is asking Rav the following situation. And while we're on the top of 82a, right? Lo pagu bo kanaim. Okay, we're saying if the zealots didn't attack him, punish him, mahu, what's the situation? Okay, inshe. Okay, what do we say here? Then who's going to be responsible? Okay, for punishing. Okay, so the Gemara tells us, inshe Rav legamre. Rav forgot what this lesson was. Akru'uhu the Rav Kahana bechalme. But the situation was read or described, okay, to Rav Kahana in a dream.
Was a student of Rav.
Okay, and what happened? And this is what the dream, okay, he saw. Bagda Yehuda v'toava ne'aset b'Yisrael v'Yerushalayim. That Judah was dealing treacherously, okay, and there was some act of abomination and etc., that was done among the Jewish people and in Jerusalem. Okay, Ki Chilel Yehuda Kodesh Hashem Asher Ahav, that Judah basically profaned the holiness of Hashem that he loved. Okay, Uba'al Bayit El Mechar. Okay, and as well as it was intimate with a strange god, right? Baal bat el necha. Okay, so what happens here? We're going to darshan this pasuk. Okay, and based on the darshaning of the pasuk, we're going to get ultimately, of course, at least two different explanations. Okay, says the Gemara. Bat enecha. Ata. Right now, he says, Amar le hachi, he told him, Ekreon adichre Rav legamre. Suddenly, this reminder went and was related to Rav. They read it, and then this reminded Rav legamre what he had learned. Okay, so now the dream that Rav Kahana had was related to Rav, which helped Rav remember some learning, okay, in regards to this longish pasuk, and he's going to give the first extrapolation. Okay, Bagda Yehuda, when it says that Judah was he treacherous, what did it mean? Zo avodat kochavim. That meant he was involved in idol worship. B'chein hu omer, and therefore we have a pasuk that says, "Begadatem bi," okay, Beit Yisrael, Okay, Ne'um Hashem. Okay, so that's citing a pasuk that we use the word Bagda, all right, in two places that gave us that explanation. Okay, the second example from the pasuk, V'to'ava ne'asra b'Yisrael v'Yerushalayim. That's our pasuk. What happens? Zemishkav zachor. In other words, he was involved in sodomy. V'chein hu omer, and therefore we cite a similar pasuk to give us that explanation. Ve'et zecher lo tishkav mishkavei isha to'evahi. So the implication is that the word to'eva is a code name, so to speak, for performance of Sodom. Right? Next, Ki Chilel Yehuda Kodesh Hashem. Okay, what about that part of the pasuk? Okay, Zozona. Okay, that's relations with a woman that is totally harlot. Okay, V'chein hu omer, and we see from this why, right? Another pasuk we're going to darshan. Lo yeh kadesh u'baal bat el mecha. Okay, zeha. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, that's the next. All right. So in other words, any kind of acts of prostitution, male or female, okay, would be considered znut, okay, and therefore forbidden. Okay. All right. So zeha ba'al hakutit. What about the fact that we say that it is one who has relations with a kutit? Okay. Uchtiv batre, and it's written after that. Yikaret Hashem leish asher ashna va'ona. Okay. Okay. Again, citing the pasuk. There shall be no consecrated harlot. We read that. The Lord will cut off the man that does this, the master and the scholar out of the tabernacles of Jacob, and him that offereth an offering unto the Lord of hosts. Okay. Ashana ad ona el me Elohei Yaakov umagish mincha l'Shem tzvako. Okay. So he took that same section, broke it down segment by segment, and darshan that. So we go on now to, okay, what happens? The in Talmid Chachamhu, and if he is a sage, lo yelo er b'chachamim v'ona b'talmidim. Okay, that if he's a sage, what happens? He's not going to have air here means awakening, but it really means teaching among the other sages. Va'ona, okay, would mean a time period, responses, involvement, but Talmidim with the disciples. And then the Gemara goes on, im kohenhu, and were this person to be a kohen, lo yelo ben magish mincha l'Shem tzvako, that he would have no son. In other words, that kohen would probably be punished with koret and not have a son who ultimately would carry on the priestly function. Okay? All right. So from here on, we're going to wing it. Okay? What happens? So Ma Rabbi Chia bar Abuha, says Rabbi Chia bar Abuha, Kol ha'ba'al hakutit, one who has relations with a kutit. Some translate it as a heathen woman. Remember, we refer back to the fact that the status of the kutim was questionable. At one point, they were thought to be acceptably Jewish, and later on, they were determined that that was not the case. Okay? So, kol haba ala kutit, ki'ilu mitchaten ba'avodat kochavim. It's as if they marry into a relationship with an idol. Why? Dichtiv, because we have written in a pasuk, ubal bat el mecha. Okay, again, citing that the relationship with the intimate of a daughter of a strange god. Okay, kibat, right? Bal mecha, b'chibat yeshlo. Is it possible, we ask, that a idol can really have a daughter? Okay, is that possible? Okay, but yeshlo el mecha el zeha ba'al hakuti, and we determine that it then is a man who has relations with the heathen woman.
Only
Okay,
if it's an American Idol.
Right. Va'amar Rabbi Chia bar Abuha, again, Katuv al Golgotho shel Yehoyakim. It was written on the skull of Yehoyakim. The following, this is similar, of course, to Hamlet, all right, that all of us are familiar with, right? Zot va'od, acheret is a Kenenu, the Rabbi Preda, all right, and this also was found, a skull that was found elsewhere. All right, and where was it found? All right, the Rav Preda ishkachach hahu Golgotha, as when Rav Preda found a skull, the Havit Shadya b'Sha'arei Yerushalayim, that was sort of thrown, okay, around the gates of Jerusalem. All right, and what happened? V'hava katuv v'luya, and it was written on it, Zot va'od, this and even more. Okay, namely, what are we saying here? All right, so what did he do? Acheret, more further on, Kavra, he buried it. Vahadar, right, and furthermore, right, Gavog Kavra. Okay, what happens? It came up out of the grave, right? Vahadar Gavog, and then it was further buried again, right? And it came up Vahadar, right? Vahadar Gavog. Okay, and so what did he say in response to that? Amar, he says, Hi Golgotha Shel Yehoyakim. This must be the skull of Yehoyakim. Dichtiv Bey, because it's written about it, the following. Kvurat Chamor Yikaver Secho V'Hashlech Mehala L'Sha'arei Yerushalayim. Okay, he shall be buried with the burial of a donkey, drawn, cast forth by the gates of Jerusalem. Amar Malka, right? So he said, indeed, that must be the king who Velav Orech Ara the Bezuye, and it's not appropriate, okay, to disgrace even the remainder of the king. Okay, so what did he do? Shakla Karcha B'Shirai, okay, that he took it, right, and he wrapped it up in some silk. Va'otve Basifta, okay, and then what did he do from there? Okay, he placed it in a Basifta, in a chest, Atai the Beitaihu, and he brought it back, okay, to his
So
home.
he left in his house, his head in a box.
This skull wrapped in silk in a box, correct.
And his wife came.
Okay, what happened? Okay, Chazita, okay, his wife saw it, okay, and what happens? Nafkat Amra Laho Lashiba Bata. She went and started telling all her neighbors. Okay, so what happens? Amra, the neighbor said to her, Hi, Deitata Kamaita. That must be the skull of his first wife.
Everybody has.
All right, Kamaita. Delo Kaman Shela Sharga Latanora Vikalta. Okay, what happens? He apparently, he says Delo Kaman. He can't forget her. All right, and so what happened? So right, Kaman Shela, I can't forget. All right, Man Shela Sharga. She lit up the oven with a lamp. Vikalta, and she basically burned it. Okay, what? We don't know. All right, so what happens? Ki ata, when he came back, Amar hainu dichtiv. Why? What did we say? Okay, Iluya about it. Zot va'od, this and yet another. Okay, that's what happens. Okay, could be. What? Could be. Okay, Zot va'od acheret. This and another one. Okay, implying it could be that he was cursing her for having done that to the skull.
Zot means the first time the skull was thrown into the streets. The
Right.
second one, they burned
Right.
it.
Okay, we'll go on and try to continue a little bit more. Ki ata Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, Amar Beit Dino Shel Chashmonai. Okay, he's telling us that when Rav Dimi came, okay, they made a decree All right, the following, right? Gazru, Haba'ala Kutit, one who has relations with a heathen woman, Chayav Ale Mishum Nasga, okay, that he is transgressing and liable on the apparently of Nashga, okay, which is an abbreviation, okay, that it could be Nida. This is actually a mnemonic device. Nida, okay, we know Nida. Shifcha, a non-Jewish woman. Goya, a heathen woman. Eshet Ish, a married woman. Okay, and it's as if he's considered having been over on all four of those situations. Ki ata Ravin, when Ravin came amar, Mishum Nashgaz. Okay, no, he changes the mnemonic device a little bit differently. That still we would have, okay, those others, Nida, we would have Goya, Shifcha, Nida, Shifcha, Goya, and the Zion would have to be, okay, would be a Zona. Okay, Zoda. Nida, Shifcha, Goya, Zona. Fortunately, this time the Gemara spells it out for us. Okay? Aval, Mishum Ishut, okay? Lit Laho. But he is not then having transgressed relations with a married woman. Ve'idach, and the other, Nishaihu Vadai Lo Mefkere. Okay, in the other case, he says basically, okay, but did not recognize the merit. But the other, okay, they don't give any permission, okay, to their wives. Amar Rav Chisda, says Rav Chisda, Habalim loch ein morim lo. Okay? If one is going to, okay, I'm going to raise the following point. Hold on a second. Ein morim lo. Okay, we were talking about the zealots, okay? And let's say we have a situation, okay, whether the zealots are involved in carrying out, okay, and they ask about carrying out punishment, as we saw with the Pirchei Kahuna, for example, or others, okay? One who changes his mind or consults. Okay, Ein Morin Lo, we don't teach it to him. Itmar, about this it was said, Nami also. Amar Rava Bar Rav Chana, he says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, once more. Habalim Loch, one who changes his mind or to consult. Ein Morin Lo, we don't inform him, instruct him. V'lo od, and furthermore, Ela She'im Piresh, okay, that if Zimri v'hargo Pinchas, okay, what about the fact we have the example, okay, that Zimri had put aside that his mistress and Pinchas had killed him. Nepach Zimri v'hargo Pinchas. It's possible that Zimri could have sort of flipped the tables and killed Pinchas. Okay? Ein heragalav shahare rodefu. Okay, we don't put him to death because he was considered a rodef. Okay, pursuer. Vayomer Moshe. Okay, el shoftei Yisrael v'gomer, and then we have a pasuk. All right, that okay, because Pinchas was the pursuer, and he, in other words, taking the life. The pasuk then says, and Moses said to the judges, slay ye every one of his men that were joined unto Baal Peor. Excuse me. So what happens, says the Gemara? Halach Shivto Shel Shimon, the tribe of Shimon, Eitzel Zimri ben Salu. They went and joined with Zimri ben Salu. Amrulo, they said to him, Hein danin dinei nefashot, v'ato yoshev v'shotek. They are judging capital cases, and you are silent. Ma'asa, what did he do? Amad v'kivet, okay, Kaf Daled Elef Yisrael. He went and then he gathered 24,000 of Jews. Valach Eitzel Cosby, and he went against Cosby. Amarla, and he said, Hashmi'i li listen to me. Amra lo, and they said, Bat Melechani. She says, I'm the daughter I'm royalty. Okay, what do you think you're doing? Okay, right, and what happens? Ani v'chein sivali avi, and my father commanded me, lo tishma'i ela legadol shebahem, that you should not, I'm going to use the word submit yourself, okay? In this case, only to one that's greater, right?
Maybe the greatest one.
Oh, the greatest one. Amar la, he said there, afhu nasi shevet, like, hey, I'm the prince of a tribe, who, v'lo, and not only that, ela shahu gadol mimenu, okay, shahu sheni lebeten, v'hu shlishi lebeten, namely, and what, not only that, but he was, I'm the, one is the second born, and the other is the third born, right? Okay, so what happens? So then the Gemara, right, says to her, says about the situation, Tafsa babiloreta. He grabbed her by her hair, her whatever hairstyle was, Vavia Eitzel Moshe, right, and brought her before Moshe. Amarlo ben Amram, he says, Zo Asura Omoteret. Is this woman prohibited or permitted? Ve'im tomar asura. And if you're going to claim that she's forbidden, okay, what about who you married, Moshe? Bat Yitro mihitir lach. Okay, that who permitted you to marry her? Okay, nit alma mimenu. Okay, right? Halacha. Okay, and if you become widowed, right, from her.
It means he forgot the halacha.
Okay.
Moshe forgot.
All right, Moshe. Nitalma mimenu halacha. Right, Moshe forgot the halacha. Okay, right. So what happens? Ga'u kolam bebechia. Everyone was pouring out in tears. V'hainu dichtiv, and that's why it's written. V'hema bochim petach ohel moed, and they were crying by the opening of the ohel moed. Uktiv, and then it's written. Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar. Okay, that he saw. What did he see? Ma'ra'ah. Amarav, says Rav, Ra'ah ma'aseh. He saw the deed, v'nizkar halacha, and therefore the law was remembered. Amarlo, he said, Achi, Avi Abba, lo kach limadatani. Okay, namely, he's talking as if he's talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. He's saying, uncle, okay, the brother of my father. Okay, my uncle. Okay, my father, didn't he teach me, right? Didn't he teach me, not grandfather, his uncle, right? Moshe was his uncle. Didn't, I wasn't,
Brother of my grandfather.
right?
Pinchas ben
Oh,
Elazar.
Avi Abba, right, the brother of my father's father, brother of my grandfather, right? That was Aaron, right? Baridatcha Maher Sinai, when you came down from Har Sinai, Haboel et Kutit, okay, that it was taught. Halacha Moshe Sinai is the implication here. What? Kanaim Pogimbo, that the zealots may strike him. Amar lo, he says to him, Krena de Igarta, Ihula Have Pronakta. Okay, that what is he saying here? Okay, that basically, okay, right.
Let him be the agent. Yeah,
Okay,
let him be the one.
That basically one who reads the letter, let him be the agent to carry out the instructions.
And Rashi brings this quote in the Chumash itself.
Okay. Ushmuel amar ra'a she'ein chachma ve'ein tfuna ve'ein etza neged Hashem. Okay. Basically, Shmuel saying that ideally, because it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, there's no better wisdom, understanding, counsel. Okay. Right? Because the divine name was being proclaimed. Right? Right? So what happens? Kol makom sheyesh chilul Hashem, any place where there is the profanation of the divine name, ein cholkin kavod l'rav. We do not give honor, respect to the teacher. Rav Yitzchak amar, Rabbi Eliezer ra'ah, sheba malach Veshchit ba'am. Okay, he saw that an angel would come and destroy the nation. Vayakam mitoch ha'edah, he got up from among the congregation. Vayikach romach, and he took a sword and a spear in his hand. Mikan she'ein nichnasim b'kli zayin lebeit hamidrash. But based on this, we learn, therefore, that one doesn't bring weapons into the base midrash, right? So that's the case. Okay, right? And what happens? All right? Shalaf shinana v'hinicha ba'unkolo. Right? He removed the tip, okay, of the spear, v'hinicha ba'unkolo, and he put it, so to speak, under his garment, right? And then he went in. Okay? Right? V'haya nish'an, and it was lying there. Nish'an v'holech al makalo. And it was leaning against, put the rest of the spear, okay, against the, so it really wasn't a weapon per se anymore. Right? V'holech al maklo, and he was, right, walking in with it, carrying. V'kevan shehagia etzel shifto shel Shimon, and once he arrived near the tribe of Shimon, Amar, he says, Echan matzinu sheshifto shel Levi gadol mishel Shimon. How do we know that the tribe of Levi is greater than the tribe of Shimon? Okay, right. Namely, what did he say? The following, right? Amru, they said, Hanichulo afhu la'asot tzarchav. Okay, Nichnas hitiro perushin et hadavar. Right. So what happened? Then they let him pass through. Okay, and what happened then? The others let him do what he wanted to do. Okay. So we now get to a new piece. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Shishani simne asulo lePinchas. There were 6 miracles that occurred to Pinchas, and the Gemara is going to list. Echad, okay. I'm sorry, Achar Shahayalo leZimri. Okay.
The first one is
Echad, right?
Yeah.
No,
it's when he says it entered the tent.
it was
tent
it was right in front of the Mishkan.
No, no, tent of Zimri.
No, he grabbed. He had relations with her publicly. That was. We'll see. Okay. All right. So what happens? So Chad. All right. So it says. I'm sorry. Nichnas v'tiro pirushin et hadavar. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Shishani sim ne'asu lo lePinchas. There were 6 miracles done to Pinchas. Right. Echad, the first. Shayalo leZimri lefrosh v'lo piresh. That it's possible that Zimri could have stopped his relations with the woman and defended himself and even killed Pinchas, right? The Echad, Shayalo ledaber, v'lo diber. Okay, one that he could have spoken. All right, what does it mean he could have spoken? He probably could have cried out for help.
Right.
Okay, and gotten his followers to attack Pinchas. All right, yeah, exactly. Shayalo ledaber, v'lo diber. The Echad, a third one, Shekivein biz zechruto shel ish u'benekivudato shel isha. Okay, that when when Pinchas gave him the death blow, we're assuming that he used a spear. Okay, what happens? That that he used a spear. That the spear struck in the appropriate sexual organs of the man and the woman. Okay, because the Torah does describe it like he stuck him, the 2 of them at one shot. Okay, all right. B'nikavato shel isha. V'achad shelo nishmatu min haromach. Okay, what does that tell us? That they were stuck onto the spear. All right, so to speak. Right through both. No, right. V'achad sheba malach. Okay, v'higbia et hamashkof. Okay, another miracle was that angel came, and what did it do? It basically all right, lifted them up, removed them from the area, right? Vehigbiya at the mashka.
Slip off.
Okay, ve'echad shaba malach vehishchit ba'am. Okay, and the other, okay, was that they came and brought destruction among the people, among the followers. Okay, to those that were Zimri's partisans, so to speak. Right? Okay, so let's go on. All right, ba, right, v'shchit ba'am. Ba v'chabatan lifnei hamakom. It came and struck them before the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Amar lefanav, and he said before him, Ribono shel olam, Master of the universe. Al elu yiplu kaf daled elef mi Yisrael. For this reason, 24,000 Jews should die. Shnamar v'hiyu hametim b'magefa arba'a ve'esrim elef. And we have elsewhere a pasuk, okay, that says that there were, okay, this large number, okay, 24,000 that died from a plague. V'hainu dichti, and that's why it's written afterwards, right? V'ya'amod Pinchas, right? V'yipalel, okay, that basically telling us, okay, that they died from the plague, and Pinchas then carried out, right, the judgment. Okay? Amar Rabbi Elazar, he says, Vayit Palel. Okay, lo ne'amar. It doesn't say he prayed, ele vayipalel. Okay, that he judged to plileh. Milamed kivyachol. It comes to tell just as if she'asa plilot imkono, that he made pleading. Okay, with his master. Okay, with his creator, Kadosh Baruch Hu. Bakshu malachei hasharet l'dachvo, that the angels wanted to push away his prayers. Amar lahem, and he says to them, Hanichulo. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, let him. Okay, Kana'ai ben Kana'ai. Why? Because he's the zealot, the son of a zealot, in a sense. Okay, that was trying to turn away the situation, right? What happened? How do we know that? Okay, it says the Gemara continuing. Hu meshiv chema ben meshiv chema. Okay, he was returning, so to speak, anger or zealotry for anger and zealotry. Hu hitchilo b'shvatim mevazinoto. Okay, and that therefore the tribes were going to abuse him. Right? What were they saying? Re'item ben puti ze. Okay, shapitem avi imo. Okay, agalim la'avodat kochavim. Do you see this son of so and so? Okay, they're referring basically to whom? Okay, to Yitro. If you're saying that he was a descendant of Yitro, in this case, who used to worship idols and do service, because Yitro, remember, also was Kohen Midyan.
But he converted. And this
Ultimately. So we'll see what the Gemara says. All right? So that's the point, right? This is the mother's grandfather. He gave cattle to idols. Okay, and now what did he do? All right? Vaharagnasi shevet mi Yisrael. And he just killed a prince of a tribe in Israel. Baha Katuv, comes the text. Vayichsu Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. And what happens? That now they give the fact, the following history, right? Okay, what is his ancestry? All right, all right, Italians. V'yachasu, and they connected the Ya'ichas, the family history of Pinchas ben Elazar, ben Aaron HaKohen. Amarlo, he says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, Hekdem lo shalom. Right? Shem tells Moshe, okay, be the first one to grant peace, a good greeting to Pinchas under the circumstances. Shnei Amar, as it says, Lochein Emor, say to him, Hinani noten lo et briti shalom. Okay, that's the first statement. Okay, V'ru'uya kaparazo shetehei mechaperet v'holechet le'olam. And this atonement should not only be enacted now, but should go on forever for future. Okay? Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Amar Rav, it's in the name of Rav. My dichtiv, what do we mean? It says when we have a pasuk that it says Zarzir Matnayim, okay, that he was quick, right?
It's an
To to act energetic, all right? Or furthermore, Otayish Umal, okay, or that a goat, okay, and a king, okay, all right? Umelech and a king, Alkum, that you wouldn't rise up against Emo, against him. Daled me'ot ve'esrim va'arba'a be'ilot ba'al oto rasha, oto hayom. That this wicked man, Zimri, what did he do? He had an enormous number of sexual liaisons. Okay,
424.
right? Okay, all right. Oto Rasha, Oto Hayom, that same day, right? Right.
That's why 25,000 people died. I
Right.
guess.
V'chamtin lo Pinchas ad shetashesh kocho, and Pinchas was smart enough to wait till he was exhausted, right? Till he no longer had strength. V'hu eino yodea shemalach shemalach al kum imo. Okay, and he did not know, okay, that he was striking, acting up, rising up against some sort of king, right? So that was the case. All right. So what happens? Imo. The matnita tana. And then we have a braita that tells us as follows. Right? Yeah. Shishim. Yeah. Shishim ad shenasa kibeitza hamuzeret vehi haita ke'aruga mle'am mayim. Right? The braita is telling us that 60 times he was like I'm going to use the word like a hard-boiled egg, okay, so to speak. All right, am I right? And what happens then? And then ultimately, all right, and then ultimately, okay, he became Vahu Haita Aruga Malay Amai. Then ultimately he became simply like a flow of water, right, a furrow or a canal of water, right? Amar Rav Kahana, says Rav Kahana now, and he tells us what? Umoshva Beit Se'ah, okay, and his seat was the size of a Beit Se'ah. Tani Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef taught Kavar Shala Ima, okay, that in a sense, I'm going to change that it's like the earth opened up and swallowed him like a womb would swallow him back. Okay, kavar shala ima. Now we get to a new piece. Still dealing with the same incident. Okay. Amar Rav Sheshet, says Rav Sheshet. Okay, we saw that it was Zimri, and the name of the woman was according to Raita, was Cosby. Rav Sheshet says, Lo Cosby Shma, Cosby wasn't her name. Okay, that wasn't her real name. Ella, her real name was Shavilnai Bat Sur Shma. That was her name, right? So the Gemara is naturally going to ask, okay, Vilama Nikra Shma Cosby. Why was she called Cosby? Shakizba Ba'aviha. Okay, because she had
tricked her father.
Trick, she had falsified, she had, kazav also means lying, okay, bringing lies regarding her father, all right? Namely, she claimed she was royalty, right? Davar acher, or another example, Kazbi she'amra la'avia, I'll show that she said to her father, Kusbi im zeh v'hainu da'amre inshe. Ben Knei or Bane Shivalnai. Okay, so why? Because people would say what business does she have, this Shavani, by the lake? Oh, wait, what was she doing? Okay, doing there with the reeds, the rushes in the lake, right? And right, Shavani, my bai bahade kalpe dekane. Shavani, what was Shavani doing by these reeds? So the Gemara then is going to tell us, okay, the following. She was my by gafta la'ama. Okay, she was having sexual activities. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Chamisha Shemot Yesh Lo Zimri. He had actually 5 names, Zimri. Okay, Ran. One was Zimri ben, okay, Uben Salu. One was Zimri. One was the son of Salu. Ushau ben Canaanite, and he was also Shaul, the son of the Canaanite woman. Okay, Ushlumiel ben Suri Shaddai, and also known as Shlumiel, the son of Suri Shaddai. How do we know? The Gemara is going to tell us, right? Right, what happens? Zimri, why? Al Shinasa Kibetsa Hamuzeret. Okay, that he was like I said, like a hard-boiled egg. All right? All right? What happens? The next Ben Salu, Al Shehasliya Unot Mishpachto, okay, that he basically did more sins. He outweighed the sins of his family. Okay? All right? Shaul, okay, Al Shehishil Atzmo Ledavar Avera, okay, that he lent himself out, so to speak, okay, to sin. Ben Canaanite, right? What part of that? Al Sha'asama Asekanam, that he did all kinds of sexual activities similar to the Canaanites did. Okay, depraved activity, orgies, unnatural intercourse, things like that. Okay, right? Sha'asama Asekanam. Umashmo Shlumiel ben Suri Shaddai Shmo. And his real name, excuse me, was Shlumiel ben Suri Shaddai. Hey?
One of the princes of
Right, that
Right.
was the name mentioned in the.
That's the name in the Torah. Okay? All right. So in other words, they wanted to discuss it. We finished that piece, and we'll go on. How are we doing time?
It's almost 9:30, 9:27.
Yeah.
This is
This is the.
It's an hour short.
No, but I'm saying I just flipped the hour. Okay? I didn't see that. All right, so let's pick up a little bit further. We'll do Kohen Sheshimesh Batuma. What about the example we said of the Kohen that carries out avodah in the mikdash in a status of impurity, right? Baimine Rav Acha Bar Huna Rav Sheshet. Rav Acha Bar, right? Asks the following shaila from Rav Sheshet. Kohen Sheshimesh Batumah. Okay, regarding a Kohen that carries out temple service, right, in a status of impurity, Chayav Mita Bidei Shemayim. He should be punished by Karet, by death by heaven. Oh, or Ein Chayav Mita Bidei Shemayim. Or perhaps he is not to be punished by heaven. All right? Right? Amale, he answered him, Tinitua. We learned this already, he said.
Zealots.
Namely, Tini Kohen Sheshimesh B'tum'ah, okay, Ein Achiv HaKohanim, Mevi'ino Tola Beit Din, that the other Kohanim do not bring him to the court. Ela Pirchei Kuhuna, but the young bucks, so to speak, of the of the Kahuna, Motzeino Tel Chutz La'azara. They bring him outside of the temple court, and what do? Says the Gemara, Upotzein Mocho Begizarin, and they crack open his skull with clubs. Okay? Okay, so what happens? The Gemara then tells us, Ve'isa Gadatach, and if going to think, Mechayev B'dei Shemayim, that he would be subject to a death penalty of karet at the hands of heaven. Okay, if that's the case. Lishvakei, let him alone. Okay. Velik tol bidei shemayim. So let him be killed by heaven. Ella, rather, mai, what do we mean? Eino chayav. Maybe we would say that he's not liable whatsoever. Mi ika mide, the Rachmana patre, va'anan nikum v'niktole. Is there some situation where the Kadosh Baruch Hu would exempt the person and instead we should inflict a death penalty? Okay, velo, that's not the case, says the Gemara. Okay, but namely vahatnan. But haven't we learned elsewhere in a Mishnah? Mi shelaka v'shana beit din. Okay, once, okay, who was flogged, okay, Malchus twice by the beit din. What do? Okay, machnisina tola kippah. Okay, we put him into a cell. Rachmana patre. Do we say there that the Kadosh Baruch Hu exempts him? Va'anan katlinan le, and we kill him. Ha'amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. But didn't Rabbi Yirmiyah say, given the situation, Amar Reish Lakish, says Reish Lakish, v'malkot shel kritut askinan. There we're dealing with the example of the flogging of the Malchus. What we say, somebody who's going to be punishable by karet is going to be for over on a lav, is going to get Malchus. De Gavra Bar Katalahu, that we consider the person as if they're already a dead man. Okay? De Katalahu. Vaha, Gonev Hakisva. And this is going to be perhaps similar to the person who stole a temple utensil. Ha'omer, as it said, Hamar Rav Yehuda, Bekli Sharet Askinan, that we dealt with this temple utensil, temple implement, Viramiza, and it was hinted at, Lo Yavo Lirot Kibeloya et HaKodesh Umetu. Okay? Again, citing the Pasuk. All right, that's going to be he's liable to the death penalty. And it's like one who's, okay, similar to Kisva. All right, because Rav Yehuda has already told us that doing so, he's going to get punished by the death. Okay, so what happens, asks the Gemara? If you're comparing it to that, Vahamikalel et Kosim, what about the one who curses using the idol enchantments? Hatani Rav Yosef. There it was taught by Rav Yosef. Okay, Yakek Kosem et Kusmo, the Mechaze Kimavarech et Hashem, that one who uses magic to curse the Kadosh Baruch Hu, it's as if he blasphemes the divine name. Vaha bo'el et hakutit. But what about the example of one we said who had sexual relations with the heathen woman? Ha ikraiv. Okay, don't we therefore raise that issue as a challenge? Okay, isn't it? Maybe it's parallel to that. Okay, here again, Akreya the Rav Kahana Bechame. We saw that it was told to Rav Kahana in his dream. Vad Karei Rav Lagamre, and that helped Rav remember the lesson. So the Gemara, however, okay, as to what the punishment would be, okay, he was reminded of the law. What happens? Etive. But we challenge this with the following example. Hayotzek v'habolel v'hapotet hamoleach hamagif v'hamagish v'hamisader et hashulchan. Okay, let's assume that one is carrying out certain acts of the mikdash. And what might he do? He takes the oil and he mixes it, and he mingles it with the flour, and he breaks it up. Okay, and he salts it, he waves it, he does all sorts of things. Okay, and he presents it in the inappropriate location on the altar. Okay, after Al Misader Shulchan Va'metiv et Nerot, or he does sets up the showbread, all right, the candles and the showbread, the komets Va'mikabel Damim V'chutz Patur. that we say that that person is exempt. All right? All right. So what happens? And, okay, that he's exempt. What happens? Ve'ein chayavin alehen. Lo mishum. Okay, just we'll finish up. Lo mishum zarut, velo mishum tum'ah, that he's not either because of uncleanness or because of tumah, velo mishum echoser begadim, and not because of lack of appropriate priestly garments, velo mishum rachutz yadayim v'raglayim, or not because he didn't properly wash. Okay, ha mekater chayav. Okay, but here, if he does offer the incense, okay, we would consider him to be liable. Okay, so the Gemara wants to pick up real quick and say, "My love mita." Okay, don't we say here then that he should be held guilty or get the death penalty, right? Lo Vahazara, okay, not can't be because there is no, all right, no warning here to tell him. Ella zar nami lahazara, but also for a non-Kohen to be involved. Okay, there is also a warning. Why? Vahaktiv, and therefore isn't it written? Vahazar hakarev yumat. Okay, that the non-Kohen who comes to revolve is going to get the death penalty. Ha kedeita, vaha kedeita. Here it's like this one, and here it's like that one. All right. Kedeita miklal de yotzek ubolel lav nami lo. Right. So we're going to, right. So this is basically finishing up. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right, right. Right? That in this case, no, Vahatanya, but we're taught Hazara liyotseku boleo, that this acts also as a warning to one who mixes and does all the things with the meal offering. Minayan Talmud Lomar, Kedoshim Yehiyu velo Yechalelu. Okay, holy you should be and not desecrate. Midirabanan, Ukra Ismachta Ba'alma. And the verse is a support to the view of the rabbis. Meitive, we challenge ve'elu hein shabamita tamei sheshimesh tiyuvta. Okay, and therefore we come and it says to us that one who is tamei, okay, and serves, all right, receives the death penalty, and that is the proof text. And we'll stop right there.
I'm gonna do the Mishnayos tonight, okay? Let me do it. It's my turn.
Okay. Sorry that wasn't.
Great.
All right, everybody stay well, all right? Thank you.